What is the Walter Kaitz Foundation about?
Well, the Kaitz Foundation was established right after my father passed away. I actually talked to him about it, but we didn't actually do anything. And what happened was that, when my dad passed away, I said, don't send flowers, send some money, we'll do something good with it. Well, I got checks for, like, the National Cable Association said that they would send $10,000 a year for the next 3 years. Bill Daniels made a $25,000 contribution. So suddenly, my wife Roberta and I were looking at this. We have $100,000 in the bank account. This is not about, we thought we ought to do something important. And, of course, coming out of Cal Berkeley and the California experience in those days where diversity concerns were very, very pressing, I guess my wife and I were somewhat, even you could say, politicized by the fact that, we realized that there had to be changes. And of course, Dad's life stood for the whole concept that there had to be opportunity for everybody in the U.S. for us to reach our full potential as not only as a country but as a world leader. So we decided that the cable industry was largely rural, almost entirely white. I think the only two African American executives at the time were Bob Johnson and Don Anderson. And Don was on my board. So we actually, working with the chair of the California Committee on Cable Television, they created a special subcommittee who was African American. We said we're going to design a program to diversify the industry. And of course I got tremendous support from a lot of people. Brian Roberts came to our first selection day. Don Anderson was there to help mentor me because I didn't really know how to do this. And I'll tell you one of the things I didn't know, one of the fallacies I had. I thought, well, we'll be taking these people who, haven't had a lot of opportunity and don't know much about business, and we'll be bringing them into business and empowering them. And Don put his arm around me and she said, Spence, she said, I know your purpose is pure. I know you really want to do this. This is important, but you don't get it. These people are already entrepreneurial. They already run businesses. And of course, he was absolutely right. I think of the 500 people that we actually placed in executive jobs in the industry during our 20-plus year run, 4 or 5 of them came from, truly disadvantaged families where they had never had any exposure to business. The rest of them were middle-class kids. Now, they didn't come from the homes of executives in business because executives in business weren't black. Nobody would hire African Americans. But there were black doctors, there were black dentists, there were black radio shows, there were black businesses. It's actually something that's kind of been lost. I remember seeing a program recently that in Chicago there's one African American owned grocery chain, but in the days when we started the foundation, and still to this day in a lot of the smaller towns, lots of African American owned businesses. So the people we ended up placing in the industry were sons and daughters of school teachers, business owners, and so forth. They were entrepreneurial, and it was exactly as Don said. We just had to get the door open. So the key was that that we had a selection. We selected from a national advertising campaign. The selection was done by HR people in the industry, so that we got exactly the candidates the HR people thought were the best candidates. And then executives from companies, along with their HR people, would come to what we called a selection day. We'd bring all the candidates in at our expense. And the only criteria for showing up in the industry was you had to have a real job available. Not required that you hire somebody. I mean, that's a decision a company had to make, but you had to have a job in mind or a couple of jobs in mind so that you came to the table as somebody prepared to employ somebody from our pool of candidates if they were qualified, if you liked them. And of course, we ended up placing 500 people. The program has changed now, of course. We support NAMIC, National Association of Minorities in Cable. We support WIC, and I'm very proud of the Emma Bowen program, which does recruit at-risk kids out of high school and puts them with media companies. But that's because the companies now have become very sophisticated in their own diversity efforts. So our program was kind of it was the start of getting diversity planted in the industry. And out of that grew an industry that I think has quite an outstanding diversity record.